Hi there, I'm Shawna Robins, founder and CEO of Third Spark Health. And today I have the pleasure of doing an Authority Magazine interview with Elizabeth Katzman, who is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and has a unique background as a former medical malpractice attorney. She has dedicated her career to uncovering root causes of health issues, helping families and individuals achieve optimal wellness through holistic solutions. Her expertise combines rigorous medical research skills with cutting-edge functional health practices, allowing her to provide evidence-based strategies that deliver results. Yay! Thank you for that, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to be talking to you today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's great to see you.
All right, so let's talk about all things perimenopause. Tell me first how you got involved in the health and wellness field for women.
So, obviously, I was a lawyer for a long time. And then when I started having children, they were having health issues. They were getting ear infections, and I was giving them antibiotics based on what the doctors were advising. And then it just seemed to never end. I thought there must be something deeper going on. So, I did my own research and I thought, oh, it seems to be maybe there's a connection with dairy. Maybe we'll just stop dairy. And they never got another ear infection. And I thought, as a mom of now four kids, if I'm going to make sure that they're in optimal health, I really have to be the CEO of, our own health. So I went back to school for nutrition. I went to the FDN program, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, which was a little deeper into science. And it really went through all the functional labs and how to read them and how to apply them. And initially, I just really wanted to do it for the sake of my family. But then as I was out in the world on the playground, other moms talking about their health issues, and I'm really passionate about it, so I could never help myself. I was like, well, just send me your stuff, I'll look it over. And so it kind of organically grew. And then I'm 50. And so a few years ago, probably when I was around 43, 44, I started noticing changes, and my clients, all being similar ages, were experiencing the same thing. And I realized, okay, we're approaching menopause. I hadn't heard the word perimenopause ever before. And so I started a deep dive into hormones. Even though I had the basics for my programs, I really didn't understand them as well as I should have. And I think every woman and teenage girl should
Mhm.
understand. Um, and so I just started doing mentorships with physicians, certification programs, and podcasts and books, and trying to pull it all together to figure it out. And it was it was a lot, but it's worth it. And it's something that I'm really happy to talk to women about who are feeling the changes that I certainly felt.
Well, I think that's a big misconception, as you and I talked about off camera, like that perimenopause is something that happens in your mid to late 40s. That's not always necessarily the case. Especially women of color, they tend to hit perimenopause and hormone changes much earlier, sometimes even in their 30s. I've had clients that have, hit it late 30s, like early 40s, like you said. And so the more information and the more that you can connect the dots for people and we can share things like this, I think it's really important because the medical community doesn't always see us. Certainly, when you go in and you say, I have tinnitus and frozen shoulder and I don't sleep and I'm having hot flashes, and they go, well, if you're, not 12 months without a period, we can't help you. Bye bye. It's like, where do you go? What do you do? So give us some tips. Give us some things that you think women need to know about.
Well, first, I advise getting hormones done early in life. And one of my first influences was actually Suzanne Summers. And I remember I was 29 years old reading her book before the internet was really a thing. And that was her advice: get your hormones done as early as possible. And in the back of her book were a list of doctors. And I fortunately had one in my area, went and got my hormones done. And I would say that, even in your teens, even though hormones are erratic, like perimenopause is sort of reverse puberty. So it's all over the board. And the same thing for a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old, even, it can still be all over the board, but it's still a good idea to get some measurements to know what your baseline is. And it's you're never too young to have perimenopausal issues, there's women that I see in their 20s because we're so inundated with plastics and all these xenoestrogens that are blocking our estrogen receptors, and they're so much stronger than our own natural estrogens. So you're seeing a lot of these issues in, sadly, in women in their 20s. So I would say you're never too young. If you feel like you're being blown off by your practitioner, you don't have to get rid of your practitioner. If you love them, if this is the person that maybe delivered your babies and you have a long relationship with, there's no reason to leave them, but you can add to your team. And again, it's like this idea of you're the CEO of your life and your health and everything else, and you can hire and fire and add to, and
Love
um,
that. I absolutely love that. That's amazing.
and it's
That's
nothing
on my
personal.
fridge. That's
Yeah.
my new mantra.
It can be looked at like a business. It does not have to be personal. Every doctor that you see is not meant to fulfill your every need and concern. It's just not possible for any one person to know every single thing. So I do like the idea of having a larger team.
Mm, I agree with that 100%. So talk to me a little bit. I know, my background is a sleep expert and my book's on sleep and the fact that I, coach a lot of women on sleep. What are your thoughts on hormone replacement and supporting sleep?
It is one of the first things that a lot of women will notice in perimenopause, that all of a sudden they're waking up in the middle of the night, or it's harder to fall asleep, or their thoughts are racing. They're laying in bed just ruminating. So progesterone plays a big factor in that. And progesterone is the first hormone that usually declines as estrogen is sort of chaotically going up and down. Progesterone is going to be the one as ovulation becomes less regular because it's released when we ovulate. That's going to affect our sleep, our anxiety, our mood. So I am a fan of starting out with adding progesterone. It will really help with sleep, and even women later in life. So if you decide to do hormone replacement, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, especially with the whole generation of women that missed out on HRT, the women in their 70s or 80s who were scared by the Women's Health Initiative,
Mhm.
around 2002.
Right.
Those women just completely missed out on it. And unfortunately, for a lot of them, they're not great candidates anymore for estrogen because of calcifications. Because if you have calcifications and add in estrogen, it can dislodge the calcium plaques. And that becomes a risk for cardiovascular events. So, for women who are still doing well with their cardiovascular health at that stage and they get a calcium score and everything looks great, estrogen is still an option. But for other women, they can't do it, but they can still do progesterone.
Mm.
And it can still greatly change their life, because if you're not sleeping, you're not able to make good food choices. You don't have the energy to work out. You have more anxiety. Your cortisol is higher. Your blood sugar's all over the place. So for someone like, my mom, I can say I have permission to talk about her case. She's not a candidate for estrogen. She's in because of the calcification. She's in her late 80s and she hadn't slept for years.
Yeah.
Years.
Decade. Yeah. Yeah. I see women that haven't slept for 10, 20 years. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Mm.
So yes, they can very safely take progesterone and finally get a good night's sleep. And then they can finally start taking some walks around the block and making some better food choices. It's
Mm.
really, progesterone can be very life changing, and it can also be used in your teens and 20s. And I'm not recommending that for everyone, but there are women who could really benefit from it, who are struggling from insomnia, from severe debilitating anxiety. And while we're cleaning out their receptors and cleaning out their gut, it is a nice little helpful, I don't want to say band aid, but it can support them and help calm them overall while they're working on everything else at what are usually stressful times.
Yeah, I like that you bring that up because it's not just a one and done. Take a pill and, all of a sudden you're going to be sleeping or you're going to be feeling better or you're going to get off your SSRIs or whatever it is, right? It's like it's part of this whole holistic picture. Just like you mentioned that you need to have a team of doctors. It's really a great thing to have to support you. You also need to have this lifestyle approach where you're looking at other things, your stress management skills, your exercise, your diet, your sleep, like all these things are all interrelated. And I like that you bring that up because hormone replacement is one important piece, but it's just one piece, right? Some people think it's like the holy grail, it'll fix everything. And I just don't think it's that easy.
Yes, it's just one piece, and you have to really be an optimal host because you can feel worse. So, if your gut is off and your receptors aren't functioning properly, and you add progesterone in the picture, you can be sad, you can be bloated, you can be feel groggy. So, all of the amazing benefits that you should have, you may not be reaping those benefits. Then you're going to say, "Oh, well, I tried HRT and it didn't really work." But that's not the whole picture.
Mhm.
There's plenty of women in their 20s who have enough hormones who don't need hormone replacement and they still feel like crap.
Mhm.
So hormones are one piece of the puzzle. You can have all those amazing hormones, but if you have a lot of toxic exposures or your nervous system is out of whack and you have a hard time balancing stress and all of the multiple factors that play into it, then HRT isn't going to help. And so with my clients, I really do like to have a period of time where we are cleaning up everything else to make sure that they're a healthy host so that the hormones don't actually make them feel worse.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so give me an idea of how you do that. How do you clean up things with your clients so that they can be, more receptive to the options that they have out there to help their bodies?
It really depends on the clients, and I do like to use different tests to see what's going on in each individual person. I'll do your typical, white blood cell count panel with differential is super important to say because your differential will tell you if there's viral or bacterial infections. I like to do a gut workup because parasites are more common than people think, and also I like to just see what bacteria they have or are lacking. And if possible, I like to use and this is sort of controversial and I don't know why, but I like the Dutch test. I
Hmm.
like to see the metabolites of estrogen
Hmm.
because then I know what pathways they favor. So if someone is favoring a more proliferative pathway or a more oxidative pathway, I like to make sure that they're getting enough proper methylation. So that would depend on food choices, whether they need to up their cruciferous vegetables or whether they need to take more supplements to optimize methylation. I want to make sure all of their pathways are optimized before we're going to add something else in. And really just basics like to make sure that they're going poo enough.
Hmm.
It's such a huge one because you don't want to add in estrogen and then be recirculating it. You
Right.
need to be making sure you're going to the bathroom at least once a day. So for someone who's constipated, I wouldn't recommend jumping into estrogen. I want to make sure that we have their digestion going along more smoothly. So it's really individual depending on the person because there's so many factors. But once I get a couple labs in, then we can get a good sense of what we need to do. And our body really wants to be in homeostasis. It really wants to come back to health. So it could seem overwhelming, but at the end of the day, it ends up being some pretty simple fixes once you just check in.
Mm. Well, and I love that you're connecting the dots for women that might not think about how their digestion plays a part in their hormone metabolism or synthesizing different nutrients or things like that. I think it's really great that you offer such a comprehensive program for women to be able to be seen. I always say, like, if the medical community could just see us, right, it would make such a difference. And I like that that's what you offer.
Thank you. Well, another thing is also with digestion is progesterone. So as great as progesterone is, it can slow down digestion. So if you've already got a more sluggish digestive tract, that could slow it down even more. So if you're starting both estrogen and progesterone at the same time, it can be difficult to know what's what. So it is really important to do a little cleanup phase in the beginning. And then in the early years of perimenopause, you can do herbal supplements like Vitex, Chase Tree, and adaptogens to help regulate your mood, and of course eating protein and fiber and all of those things are amazing tools in your late 30s, early 40s. But at some point, our ovaries really do stop producing hormones. And although, our adipose tissue will produce some estrogen, it's estrone, so it is the more inflammatory version. It's not really the one that we want. Our adrenals will still produce testosterone, which is why that's usually the last to go, and it will still produce a little bit of progesterone at some point when our ovaries give up, and they will. Then it is really a serious conversation that someone needs to have with themselves and their practitioner, whether or not they choose to replace those hormones. And knowing that if they choose not to, that all of a sudden we have a lot of risks that go up beyond what a man would face.
Right.
So, we obviously have higher rates of dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Our rates as younger women are much lower than men's with cardiovascular disease.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, post-menopause, they accelerate dramatically. Our risk for osteoporosis is much higher than a man's. And I think that's one of the ways that women are really being failed, is when they are being deprived of their hormones during those up to 10 years before they're actually in menopause. They're losing their bones at a very rapid rate. So when they're going to the doctor and saying they're having a hard time sleeping, or they're having hot flashes, and they may just be, and let's say they go to a doctor that is for hormone replacement. And so they think, okay,
Which
my
can be
doctor,
a rarity, by the way, right? In this
it
day.
can, it's,
Yeah.
it can
It can
be
be
a
a struggle in
rarity.
itself. Yeah.
But then even when they find someone, they may think that they're functional just because they're open to hormones, and they can be given a patch
Right.
or a birth control pill.
Mm-hmm.
And that will make their hot flashes go away, but that's not going to get their estradiol levels to be bone protective.
Right. Right. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of people that are on the lowest possible patch, zero 0.3, 0.25, and they don't understand why they have 90% of bone loss by the time they're 60.
And it's so sad because they're
Yeah.
proactive. They're the ones that were doing all the things
Right.
they thought they were supposed to.
Right.
They're like, how did this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was just enough to suppress hot flashes.
Yeah. Just to treat the symptoms, but not to actually help you have longevity and quality of life.
Just enough to kind of shut you up a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. And that's unfortunately kind of been the methodology around, the whiny woman. I know
The
that,
whiny woman.
yeah, Dr. Haver talks about that as an OBGYN about, oh no, here comes another whiny woman. What can we do to just shut her up?
Yes.
So we need to be women that are educated, and we need to be the CEO of our lives. That's what it really comes down to. You started this conversation this way, and I think it's a wonderful way to finish it. What do you need to do in your life as a woman, especially in midlife, to take back your power and educate yourself and know the right questions to ask and create the right team around you?
And to get copies of your own labs and
Mm,
look them up.
and understand what they mean.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here today. How can women find you? How can they connect with you? Where are you on social media? And tell me a little bit about this.
I'm on strongchoices.com is my website, and I'm active on Instagram, which is strongchoices1, the number one.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.